Questions. I call on Deputy Matt Carthy for Sinn Féin.
Garmaigat Cancora. Taoiseach, what transpired at the Dáil Reform Committee last evening confirms that your government is hell-bent on plunging this Dáil into chaos. Your proposal seeks to turn the democratic rules and functioning of the Parliament inside out and upside down. You're seriously pushing to allow Michael Lowry and his group of TDs to be part of leaders' questions. And you're also trying to extend this right to backbench TDs from your own parties who already have multiple opportunities to speak in the Dáil. And bizarrely, you then want to cut Taoiseach's questions, which is the current opportunity for all TDs, including backbench government TDs, to put questions. This makes it crystal clear that this is all about Michael Lowry. Leaders' Questions is the main facility for the opposition to hold this government to account. It is critically important to the democratic integrity of the Dáil that this is upheld. Michael Lowry and his group are not opposition TDs. They're not unaligned and they are not others. They are government TDs, plain and simple. They designated themselves as such when they negotiated, drafted, agreed the programme for government and then publicly announced that they would support the government in good days and in bad. To allow them to be part of leaders' questions makes a mockery of this Dáil. You're so determined to protect your grubby deal with Michael Lowry that you would shred the core democratic functions of this Parliament. Michael Lowry is a politician who still has serious questions to answer regarding his evidence to the Moriarty Tribunal. Questions indeed were raised on the floor of this Dáil 4 weeks ago, and we haven't heard a peep from Deputy Lowry since. No statement, no answers. So, Taoiseach, can I ask you, have you asked Michael Lowry if he had 57 meetings regarding the Doncaster deal, including here in Leinster House? Because he told the tribunal that he had no involvement in that deal. Have you asked Michael Lowry if, in August 2002, he went to a rural farmhouse to burn original documents relating to deals at the heart of the Moriarty investigations? Have you asked him how his accountant made 2 separate payments that originated in Gibraltar to the person arranging the Doncaster deal? Because these payments were never disclosed to the tribunal. Taoiseach, you and Micheál Martin made Michael Lowry the kingmaker in your government, and now you provide him with cover. It seems that you will stop at nothing to protect Deputy Lowry and your grubby deal. You intend to throw the Oireachtas into chaos. You are manipulating standing orders. You are blocking the formation of committees. And while you focus on protecting your deal, there are big issues affecting Ireland and affecting people's lives. We face potential trade barriers that could have huge consequences. Rents are through the roof. The price of fuel and groceries are going up again. Hundreds of people are lying on hospital trolleys every single day. Parents of children with special needs still have to fight and fight for services. You and the Taoiseach gave your word in this chamber that a solution would be found agreeable to both government and opposition. Last night, Taoiseach, you broke your word and you've moved forward with yet another stroke. Taoiseach, I have to tell you, this isn't going to fly. The combined opposition will fight this every step of the way. So this needs to be resolved, Cancora, in a way that upholds the democratic integrity of the Dáil, defends the rights of the real opposition to hold government to account and, more importantly, allows us to get on with the work of this Dáil. The leaders of the combined opposition have written to you, Taoiseach. They have sought an urgent meeting with yourself and the Taoiseach to work out a solution. Will you agree now to that meeting?
As we've already had a very extensive process, and let me agree with you on one thing. The people of Ireland expect this place and the people who show up to do their work to start talking about the issues that matter to them, to start addressing issues around housing, around special needs education, around disability. And what they certainly don't expect is this sort of immature behaviour, that if after a democratic vote is carried out in a group set up, a committee of this Parliament, a Dáil Reform Committee, that people don't respect the outcome of that democratic vote. The only thing that actually subverts democracy is minority rule. We had a general election, and the people sitting behind me in Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil have every right to have their voice heard, have every right to bring forward proposals, and I'm going to stand up for their rights on behalf of their constituents as well. Because, Ceann Comhairle, I could do without the cacophony. Thank you so much.
Answer, please.
Thank you very
folks.
much. Because in the next 6 weeks, let the people at home know this, Count Corla, there'll be 90 priority questions to various ministers. Sinn Féin will have 47, Labour will have 12, Social Democrats will have 11, they'll have none. 0. How is that fair? How is their democratic mandate any less than yours? So the reality of this... Okay, yeah, let's deal with that.
Deputies,
Let's deal with that also.
Out of respect, listen to the answer. Your member will be able to come back. Please, deputies, allow the Taoiseach to finish.
They're using my time, Count Corla, because I have quite a bit I want to say on this. We have engaged extensively, and let me also say we've moved. Sorry, we did. You weren't at the meetings. Your leader was there. And we've moved, deputies. Not with me. We've moved. We had a position, and we were willing to change the position, because in fairness to opposition, it is important to listen. And we did not go ahead with the proposal that would have seen your leader's questions eaten into. Under these proposals, you all get the exact same amount of leaders' questions. That's not your problem. You don't want other people to have a right to ask their questions.
Please.
And let me say this. In so many parliaments, because we live in a parliamentary democracy where everyone's mandate in this place counts, everybody's, government and opposition. In so many parliamentary democracies, so many of them, including the one just across the water, of course, government members of parliament can ask the head or the deputy head of government questions, and that happens in PMQs in the House of Commons every single week. So enough of the hyperbole. We've heard lots of hyperbole. We've heard lots of hotter. I've answered the question. I've answered the question. We've had meetings. We've had dozens upon dozens of hours. We've had a vote, a democratic vote in this Parliament of the people's representatives, and now we intend to get on with the people's business. And you raise the issue of trade. You raise the issue of tariffs. What you have done in opposition today is utterly childish, because the idea that at a time when it has never been more important for government ministers to go abroad and represent this country on trade talks, on tariff talks, on Ukraine, on the Middle East, on issues you say you care about, what have you decided to do? Block the pairs so people can't travel. Shame on you.
Deputy Carthy.
I'll deal with that now in a moment.
Please be respectful, members, to everyone.
Taoiseach, don't ask people to buy that rubbish. You might treat your own Fine Gael backbenchers as idiots, but you won't take the Irish people for fools. Because this has nothing to do. Cancorla, this has nothing. Cancorla, this has nothing to do with the rights of backbench.
I can't hear my ears. Deputy, you might would somebody give me a chance to put the withdrawal question? Please, members, understand. The public are looking in. We are all adults. Now, I'd ask you, Deputy Carthy, on the basis of respect for every member of the House, would you withdraw those remarks?
Which remarks?
What you said with regards to treating his backbenchers, I think you should...
I'm sorry that the Taoiseach is treating his backbenchers in this way, because this has nothing to do with the rights of backbench government TDs. This is about one man's demands, the demands of Michael Lowry. Now we know that Fine Gael owe Michael Lowry one. Michael Lowry is the man that took Fine Gael from the verge of bankruptcy to a point that there were millions in profits in a manner that has never fully been explained. But Taoiseach, whatever you owe Michael Lowry, you owe more to the Irish people. You owe them the right to have a functioning parliament where the opposition can hold government to account. And what you have attempted to do is usurp the rights of the opposition, and it won't be tolerated. So what I'm asking you, considering all the hyperbole about pairs, you insist on using your majority to ram through the most undemocratic charade, facade, farce that this Dáil has seen. Don't expect that the opposition will just sit back and not use our mandate to...
Taoiseach to respond. Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Carthy, thank you. Deputy Carthy. Deputy Carthy. Deputy Carthy, your time is up. Thank you. Taoiseach. Members. Members, please. Taoiseach, please respond.
I'll do my very best, Gian Corla. Thank you. You talk about the Moriarty Tribunal. I fully accept the findings of the Moriarty Tribunal. My party voted in favour of setting it up. But we don't have to look back 20, 30 years to find issues in relation to fundraising when we look at your party, because we only have to read the Sunday Independent earlier this week. And you asked me, have I ever asked somebody a question? Did you ever ask former councillor in your own constituency, former Sinn Féin councillor Owen Smith, what he meant when he talked about Billy Hampton, the man who left you the rural cottage? You remember 99,000 for the derelict cottage, the reclusive English millionaire? When your former councillor in your constituency said the money bequeathed to Sinn Féin by Hampton was a lot sweeter than the Northern Bank robbery money. When you put it in context, it's a lot sweeter than something like the Northern Bank. It was legit, it was straightforward, and it was handled properly. There was no comeback. I'm being shouted down in this democratic parliament by people who are engaging in
I know
in
you don't. Deputy Carthy. Taoiseach, to continue, please.
Yeah, I'm being shouted down. I know you're a bit sensitive this week because you must be the first Justice spokesperson to ever stand by the graveside of somebody who was involved in the murder of an Irish soldier and a recruit murder of an Garda Síochána, someone you call a patriot. Shame on you.
Time is up. Thanks, Taoiseach. Thanks, Deputy. Can I just say that whilst you may not get an answer to the question in the same way that if I ask a deputy to withdraw a remark and they don't, I can only ask. Now I'm moving on to Deputy Gary Gannon of the Social Democrats.
Taoiseach, the game is up. The pretence that this government values cross-party collaboration has been very clearly exposed as a sham. Given the chance to work with the opposition on Dáil reform, the government preferred the nuclear option, ramming through its undemocratic proposals on Dáil reform at the 11th hour. All to deliver a grubby little deal for Michael Lowry and his band of independents. And Taoiseach, I can't help it, it makes us wonder, it makes the public wonder, what exactly is it the leverage that Michael Lowry has on Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil that brings forward such commitments? But like all grubby little deals, that one too was done behind closed doors, and sure, we may never know the details. But Taoiseach, you made a commitment in this chamber. Both you and the Taoiseach gave a solemn commitment that you would work across the chamber collaboratively in relation to any Dáil reform. And that very, very clearly now lies in tatters. And who can forget other promises? 40,000 homes to be built before the election. We will enact the Occupied Territories Bill before the election. All gone. Nothing delivered. Just, I won't use the word lies, but it's hard to say otherwise. And well, I'll take it back. Another con trotted out just to give this idea of who you are to the public and then what you do in private completely different. So very clearly, the opposition cannot trust this government. So Taoiseach, I want to talk to you about another issue. It's been very clearly flagged that you're going to bring forward a proposal to remove the triple lock. You're going to bring it to Cabinet next month. But whenever you're asked about that proposal, you talk in riddles. We know that you want to remove the requirement for peacekeeping missions to have a UN mandate. But we are totally in the dark about what you plan to replace it with. Yesterday, my colleague, Deputy Gibney, asked you what these plans. You told her that these plans have been long in the making. So why can't we be provided with any clarity? So long in the making, what exactly is it you're looking to replace it with? Will it be a double lock? Will it be a single lock? Will the UN have any role in the process at all? These are very reasonable questions for something long in the making. I hope you can give us some clarity. Taoiseach, I'm not saying for a second that the UN is perfect. Far from it. But we all remember the horrors from which it was born out of. And therefore now is not the time to be removing ourselves from these institutions we should be committing to building up. So let me ask you, if we remove ourselves from the UN and the triple lock in the UN, are you now saying that we go on NATO missions? Will it be EU-led missions? What exactly missions would you like to send our troops on that cannot be done under the triple lock as it presently stands? Taoiseach, I'd like some answers to these questions. Now, you said you'd want to work constructively across the House in relation to the triple lock. We are off to a very poor start with that regard, so we'll take it with a large pinch of salt, because trust has been broken. So, Taoiseach, I'd ask you not to speak in riddles in relation to the triple lock. What exactly is the proposal? And Taoiseach, one more time, I implore you, do not ram through these undemocratic proposals. We all know backbenchers have speaking time. The questions on promised legislation. There's ample opportunities for backbenchers to have their voices heard. The idea that changing the nature of democracy is actually unjust, it's unfair and it's unbecoming.
Thank you, Deputy.
Well, look, thanks, Deputy Gannon. Just firstly, I mean, ramming through. There's a lot of phrases being used here. Ramming through. I mean, this issue, you've been spending more time talking about speaking rights than any other issue in this Dáil. Anybody watching in at home doesn't believe this is rammed through. There have been dozens upon dozens upon dozens of hours of meeting in relation to this, and now it's time. You know what it's time to do? Make a decision and move on and get this place working, get the committee set up so we can actually get down to the granular detail of the Occupied Territories Bill at committee. That's where that granular level of detail happens, as you know, Ceann Comhairle, in committee hearings, and those committees we need to move and establish them. I really believe that. And the second phrase, which we can't just be thrown around here, is undemocratic. It is an absolute act of democracy that the people's representatives come in here and exercise their vote, talk or kneel. Sorry, this is the arrogance of you on this, that we've no mandate. We've no mandate. These people have a mandate. These people have a mandate. These people have a mandate. This idea, you've just shouted across the floor of the Dáil in case they missed it at home, no mandate. Ceann Comhairle, everybody has a mandate. And as you said in your letter yesterday, which I read, as you said, I'm entitled to speak, as you said in your letter yesterday, it is up to the members of this House, the democratically elected people of this Dáil, to decide the standing orders. And it is absolutely in line with democracy, after an election, for government and opposition to put forward amendments and then have a vote on the floor of the Dáil. That is what we intend to do. We're going to do it next week. We're going to respect the outcome of the Dáil Reform Committee yesterday and have a vote next week and move this place forward in terms of delivering for the people. On the issue of the triple lock, and I do want to engage constructively in this, genuinely, because we do need to get this right. And I had a good engagement, even though we don't share the view, I accept that, but I had a good engagement with Deputy Gibney on this yesterday, and I look forward to more good engagements across the House. But I do believe we need to amend the triple lock. We did make that clear in the last government. We did make it clear during the election campaign, and we've also made it very clear in the programme for government. There are a number of times already where the veto that the UN Security Council has, people like Putin sit on this, the veto that they have has stopped Irish peacekeeping troops, men and women of Óglaigh na hÉireann that I'm so proud of, participating. And there are examples that I gave yesterday. So, for example, the possibility of a veto emerged in 2022 in relation to the UN authorisation for UNIFOR Operation Althea in Bosnia-Herzegovina. In 1999, a permanent member of the UN Security Council vetoed the renewal of the United Nations Preventative Deployment Force. As a result, we weren't able to participate in the mission in relation to the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia. More recently, in 2015, the EU established a security mission in the Mediterranean, helping refugees, known as Operation Sophia. This mission didn't have a UN mandate until 2016, and we couldn't participate. And also in organisations that we, and I think you, passionately believe in, like the Maritime Analysis Operations Centre on Narcotics, an international maritime intelligence centre supported by the EU. They requested a naval service ship. Ireland wanted to go. I'd say there was a political consensus around it, and we couldn't do it because there wasn't a UN mandate.
Thank you, Taoiseach. Deputy Gannon.
Taoiseach,
The facts speak for themselves. The government's credibility has been shattered. We spoke of mandate. Each of us stood before an electorate in Mere 2 months ago. Had that electorate known that you'd be making grubby little deals that change the nature by which government would be able to correct their own homework, I doubt anybody would buy into that. And that's what we're talking about right here. But in relation to the triple lock, it is noticeable that, I don't think I can answer a simple question. So we asked for specifics. You will know very well that we hear a lot about UN Security Council vetoes. And the reality is that has actually only happened once. And that was more than 20 years ago. And the law was clarified in 2006 to help address that specific situation. It's in the Defence Amendment Act of 2006. But it has not stopped Irish peacekeepers from participating in missions. The UN needs reform. We should be working on that from within the inside, instead of abandoning it as a requirement. Taoiseach, I would ask you again, remove yourselves from this ridiculous policy of changing the nature of our parliamentary democracy. More importantly, be truthful with the Irish people about the triple lock and what exactly it is you plan to replace it with, because you didn't give me that answer.
Thank you, Deputy Gannon.
I do my best here. I was asked a question as to what missions could we not participate on. Well, let's check the transcript. But I heard you very clearly ask, where would you like to send people on missions? And I gave you. It's almost impossible. I'm just trying to answer the questions. I'm allowed to answer. Am I allowed to speak? Is that okay? I know you don't want them to speak, but am I allowed to speak?
Yeah.
Am I allowed to speak?
Taoiseach, please.
Thank you. I would really like to, Ceann Comhairle. Because I've given you 4 examples, and nothing to do with 25 years ago, because last time I checked 2022 was 3 years ago. 2017 wasn't long ago, 2015 wasn't long ago, and 1999 wasn't long ago. But let the people at home know this. This government and I are in favour of military neutrality. What we're not in favour of is Vladimir Putin having a veto on where our peacekeepers can go, and we will bring the legislation to Cabinet. When that legislation is brought to Cabinet, it will be published, it will go to pre-legislative scrutiny, and if you start actually get in this place, get on with the job. We'll set up a committee, bring in experts, and let's engage at the committee.
All right. Thank you, Tánaiste. Richard Boyd-Barrett, Independent Parties Technical Group.
Thanks, Ceann Comhairle. Contempt, arrogance, sleeving politics, speaking out of both sides of your mouth. That's what was on display at the Dáil Reform Committee on the part of the government last night. And why is that important? You see, it's not just contempt and arrogance and speaking out of both sides of your mouth that's a problem for the opposition, but it is the mask slipping on a more general approach of the government, which is about arrogance, contempt, and speaking out of both sides of your mouth on precisely the issues that we are trying to represent to you in here about the failure of your government to address the problems faced by ordinary people. The contempt we saw on display last night mirrored the contempt and arrogance you displayed when you confronted a Section 39 worker in Cork during the election campaign and were called out on it. And it goes on, because despite your pleadings afterwards, when you were shamefaced by Charlotte Fallon about the despicable, arrogant, contemptuous treatment of Section 39 workers who look after people with dementia, with Parkinson's disease, who suffered from strokes, with other disabilities, other vulnerable people, you continue to show that contempt such that those workers, thousands of them, low-paid workers, have now had to ballot for industrial action because despite your squealings during the election, you still have not done right by those workers, low-paid workers. I was talking to one of them today, who, by the way, has written to all of you individually, all the ministers, who works out in Ballymun, a Section 39 worker, who's been working for years looking after the most vulnerable in our society, is on a miserable €15 an hour. Many of his colleagues are on €13 an hour. They suffered 2 pay cuts during the austerity period, which were never restored. He's got about a €1 an hour pay increase over a period of 10 years. But still earning just above minimum wage, and he doesn't enjoy parity with other people doing exactly the same job who are directly employed by the HSE. And the government says, oh, we're going to do right by you. You said, oh, well, yes, I heard what Charlotte Fallon's saying, but still, you go into the WRC, or sometimes, as Noel told me, you don't bother going into the WRC to give a firm commitment that there will be pay restoration and pay parity for Section 39 workers, the pay increases that they should have got over the last 10 years to address the cost of living. Are you going to give that commitment to Section 39 workers, or will you show the contempt, the arrogance and the sleeving politics that were on display last night?
Deputy, it's for the Tánaiste now to respond. Tánaiste.
Thanks so much, Ceann Comhairle. So firstly, on the issue of speaking rights, I was just trying to work it out here, and my numbers may be off, so correct me, Ceann Comhairle, if they are. But in a leader's question slot, somebody gets 3 minutes to ask the question, 3 minutes to respond, a minute to ask a follow-up, and another minute to respond. So you're having a row here about 8 minutes twice a week. 8 minutes twice a week, where we believe that government backbench TDs and independent TDs who aren't ministers and are unaligned should be allowed to ask a question on behalf of their constituents. That's it. That's what you're having the row about. And then when it comes to priority questions, you don't lose a minute. So to all of these people who at home,
Deputy Boyd-Barrett can address it.
To people at home watching this who are busy with their actual lives and the real issues that matter to them, and they're going, what is this row about in the Dáil? Well, what it's not about.
Deputies.
What it's not about, Ceann Comhairle.
Deputies, you're only delaying the answer.
Because my experience, the opposition don't seem to have any challenge speaking, including speaking over me. Because what this is actually about is not taking a minute to speak in time off Sinn Féin, not taking a minute to speak in time off People for Profit, not taking a minute to speak in time off Labour, not taking a minute to speak in time off Social Democrats or Independent Ireland or anybody I've left out. But actually saying twice a week, 8 minutes. 8 minutes, we'll allow people who got democratically elected thousands of votes stand up on behalf of their constituents and ask a couple of questions. I think that's perfectly reasonable. Now, I want to talk specifically about. But you see,
let's have nobody speaking over anybody.
That's the truth. And you see, that's the truth. But you see, the truth is, and you see it in here in leaders' questions, you don't want any of us over here to be able to speak. There's this new tactic since the Dáil has come back. Studs up, shout them down, put up the video on Twitter, misrepresent the position. We're not going to take it anymore. I'm going to speak on behalf of my Democratic mandate as well.
Please.
And I love the fact that Louise O'Reilly thinks everything's so hilarious.
Please.
Well, I don't think it's hilarious. I don't think it's hilarious, Deputy Louise O'Reilly, that you're continuing to misrepresent people in here having a chance to ask a question, because people who got elected in your constituency who support the government have every right as well. Have every right as well. Now, Margaret, on the second part of your question in relation to Section 39 workers, let me agree with you that these individuals do incredibly important work in our health services, our disability services and our social care services. Let me also agree with you that we need to address the issue of pay, and we need to do it with urgency. And that's why this week my Cabinet colleagues, Minister Norma Foley and Minister Hildegard Naughton, updated Cabinet on this matter. And the next step here is to get people back into the WRC. And I want workers to know that talks are scheduled to resume on Monday the 3rd of March, and I want to see them brought to a successful conclusion. Because it's absolutely in the interest of workers, of course it is, as articulately put forward by Charlotte. It's also in the interest of service users, because there are people with a disability who need to make sure we can properly staff these organisations, and government is fully committed to making progress.
Thank you, Taoiseach. Deputy Boyd-Barrett.
You see, the point is, people who are part of the government will never really ask the hard questions and call you out. Call you out. You see, Noel, the Section 39 worker I was talking to, says he's going to mention the WRC. He's going to mention the WRC. And he's going to say, we've been to the WRC, and sometimes the government don't even bother to talk, to turn up. And he said it's a stalling tactic. He said, I guarantee you that Simon Harris says WRC. They don't want WRC, they want a commitment for pay restoration. Give the commitment, pay parity, so that we don't have people doing the same job being paid different rates because one of them happens to be outsourced to a Section 39 charity looking after the most vulnerable in our society. Donohue Home Care is closing tomorrow because you are outsourcing the home care to people with dementia, vulnerable people, to a charity which can collapse because you don't care about the service users and you don't care about the workers, the Section 39 workers who are looking after.
Deputy, thank you. Now give the Taoiseach time to answer. Taoiseach, please. Answer.
Must be exhausted while they're shouting at me. I mean, there's no need to shout at me. I'm listening to you very clearly here. The reality is, I've said, I'm hearing and listening, and please listen back. Please listen back, because I've said very clearly, we are going to go to the WRC, and yes, I am going to say the WRC, because as your constituent would know, and as everybody around this country knows, that's where we sort pay issues. We don't sort them shouting and roaring at each other. We sort them through the established industrial relations mechanism of this country. And if the government sets the mandate for that, and I've already told you, and much more importantly told people at home, that the Cabinet was updated on this week, and that the talks, Kim Corla, are going to progress at the WRC on Monday. Now, in relation, that is a commitment. It's a very clear commitment to make progress. Now, Deputy Boyd-Barrett, you let the mask slip here. Talking a lot about mask slipping. You believe your question and the veracity of your question is better than all of their questions and more valuable. And it's not. You're definitely a passionate contributor. But everybody, government and opposition, this is a parliamentary democracy, have a right to put their question, and I'm going to vindicate the right of my party colleagues.
And now I move to Deputy Richard O'Donoghue. Thank you, Deputy.
Thanks, John Corla. And Taoiseach, this goes back to when you were Taoiseach and we had a meeting over wind farms. And you were asked 5 parliamentary questions, which you responded to 2 immediately. You delayed the response to 2 more and they came to you on the 22nd of October, and you delayed it until the day of the election to respond to the other 2, and you've never yet responded to 1. To clarify, for how many years wind farms applications have been approved without HSE oversight? Why Bord Pleanála ceased informing the HSE of such applications, whether Bord Pleanála was instructed to stop the practice, and who is responsible for ensuring public health risks are properly assessed in the planning process. To ask the response to parliamentary questions published in 2022, October 22nd, regarding HSE involvement in wind farm planning were delayed for 5 weeks, held by your department and only referred to the HSE on the day of the general election, and to request the outstanding question to be fully answered. To the Taoiseach to state government's official position on health impact on wind farms, given the absence of the HSE input in the planning process and growing concerns for affected communities. Planners lack the expertise to access public health risk, so why did ABP stop informing the HSE? Were they instructed to stop, and who was liable? What is the state's position on wind farms and their health impacts? Finally, the High Court has ruled wind turbine noise is a nuisance. So, Taoiseach, and I want this back off you in writing, will you provide a written response confirming whether wind farms' noise at 43 decibels LA 90 is considered a statutory nuisance? On that basis, does the government reject the High Court judgment on wind turbine noise as a nuisance? So I want to go back, and before you come back and answer the questions. So the guidelines for wind farms hasn't been updated since 2006. In 2013, I have video evidence from the now Taoiseach against Enda Kenny asking him for the guidelines to be upgraded. And I have a full written part here of his concerns at the time. Since then, Micheál Martin and yourself have been in government for numbers of years, and you haven't updated the guidelines, even though there is implications to health risk. So if you could answer the question I've given you in writing and the other responses to me, please.
Thank you, Deputy. Thomas, just to respond.
Well, I want to thank Deputy O'Donoghue for the question. I want to thank him for meeting with me, with now Minister Canny, I think, and bringing some of your constituents to see me in relation to this issue. And let me firstly say, it was very clear to me the stress and the anxiety, the worry that the people you brought to meet me were experiencing, and I acknowledge that. And before we get into science and guidelines and everything else, I accept the bona fides of that, the worry and the stress, and they were talking to me about the impact that it was having on them. That is one of the reasons why in the programme for government we did explicitly state the need to make progress in relation to updated guidelines on this matter. And let me also say this, I accept this has gone on far too long. I accept that because this has been talked about for a long number of years. It is also my view, and yes, I will reply in writing to each of those specific questions, and thank you for suggesting I do that. But I also think this idea of the HSE being a notifiable organisation is common sense, so let me just establish that, and I think that would certainly assist in closing the loop, I think, in terms of some of the issues that people are raising pending the guidelines. The factual position, Count Corder, for the record of the House, is that the Department of Housing, Local Government and Heritage is progressing the focus review of the wind energy development guidelines. The review is looking at a number of key aspects, including noise, setback distance, shadow flicker, community obligation, community dividend and grid connections. They're working in conjunction with the Department of Climate, Environment and Energy, because that has primary responsibility for environmental noise matters, and they've been working to advance guidance on the noise aspect of the guidelines, which I'm informed is highly technical in nature. These two departments have been engaging on proposals regarding the measurement and the assessment of noise from wind turbines to ensure that they're robust and fit for purpose, having regard to various targets that have been set. Further to this engagement, I'm informed that the Department of Communications, Environment and Energy appointed noise consultants in May of 2023 to work on amendments to those aspects of the guidelines. I'm also informed that this work is now substantially complete. So the Department of Housing, in conjunction with the Department of Communications, will make any further changes to draft guidelines which are deemed necessary in wake of this work. And then once published, there will be an opportunity for people to engage on this. In advance of the work, the evolving policy, and this is also fair because we have had new planning legislation, including the new Planning and Development Act and indeed the National Planning Framework, that this does need to make sure that the finalised guidelines are in line with both that piece of legislation and the new National Planning Framework as well. So while the current guidelines do remain in force, that the work and the acceleration of the work on new wind guidelines is underway, and I will provide you with written answers to each each of the specific matters you've raised.
Thank you, Tánaiste. Richard.
Thank you, Tánaiste. And I'm now going to go back to what Micheál Martin had said in 2013. Taking health issues you're taking all the health implications up along by the wind manufacturers. So taking health issues from producers and manufacturers and ignoring World Health Guidelines. In the words of Micheál Martin in 2013, full absence of transparency, absence of consultation with residents, above all absence legislation framework, health implications in the terms of noise, shadow, flicker, deduction, amenities, negative visual impact. Micheál Martin quoted from a Professor Alan Evans, wrote in the British Medical Journal, "Sympathised in our plight. If this goes ahead, it will ruin your lives." Unquote. Micheál Martin's words again, planning guidelines of 2006 are outdated and the framework for the new technology. And he requested in 2013 that we accelerate the process. We're 12 years down. People and their families have been health implications. Communities have been devastated. And with all due respect, an acceleration in 12 years,
Deputy,
if that's what you consider acceleration, I have no vision for the future if that's acceleration.
Thank you, Deputy. Tánaiste.
Thanks very much. Look, Deputy, I've acknowledged that this has gone on a very long time. That's true. There's no getting away from that fact. I've also tried to provide, which I accept, maybe comfort to some of your constituents and people you've interacted with, some of the rationale behind that, including the evolving planning legislation, the national planning framework, and more crucially, perhaps, the bringing in of experts to look at this whole issue of noise from a technical point of view to get the guidelines right. But look, I do take the seriousness of it. It became very apparent to me when I saw the people behind the stress and strain of this, and I will ask the new Minister, Minister Brown, to provide you with a timeline and to write to you on this matter too.
Thank you, Tánaiste.